Guys, what do you think about Marvel television? It's definitely been a journey, and now with a few new additions as well as the Netflix shows being made canon officially, there's something that needs to be done. My friends, it's time to rank the television shows of the MCU. What is up, everyone, and welcome back to Jones Vibes. Hulk, smash the like button really quick for me, and let's dive in. All right, my friends, so now that Echo has premiered in full, and we now know as a fact that all of the Marvel Netflix shows are canon, it only makes sense to put my opinions on the line and rank every show that has come from the MCU. You all know how much we love the MCU around here, so I'm not going to waste any time. Let's dive in, and first I'm going to start with a few honorable mentions. These are just a few things that didn't fit on the list, and they are Werewolf by Night and the Guardians of the Galaxy Holiday Special. And honestly, I loved both of these. I left them off mainly just because they were television special presentations and not like television shows with multiple episodes, so I kept them off this list. And then there is Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., and I know that this might cause some controversy. I'm sorry, guys, but I did not watch this show, and technically it's not canon, and so it was left off. There's also shows like Cloak and Dagger and Agent Carter specifically that are a little just up in the air regarding their timeline status. With all that out of the way, let's start this rank. We're going to go from worst to best here. So starting in last place at number 17, I have Iron Fist. And I can see why some people enjoyed this show. For me, it purely came down to the casting. Nothing against Finn Jones. He's got a great last name, by the way. He just wasn't much of a Danny Rand for me, and therefore none of it ever worked. But moving on to number 16, I have She-Hulk Attorney at Law. And guys, I have to tell you, I was sort of all in on this show after the first two episodes. I was liking the vibe and I was liking the style, but it just went downhill quick for me. Didn't like the Daredevil stuff very much in it, and the breaking of the fourth wall finale stuff, it didn't work. It's definitely bottom tier, and now that's not to say that if the character Jennifer Walters shows up again, I wouldn't be excited. Like, I liked the character, I just didn't like this show. Then number 15, I put Secret Invasion, and this is a show that got a lot of hate, and I found myself enjoying it while I was watching it way more than it seemed like other people were. By the end of the season, I didn't think that it was a masterpiece by any means, but getting to watch Sammy J and Don Cheadle for a season of television just isn't a bad life. But you'll notice that this is pretty far down the list, and it's mainly because my feelings have changed. They've shifted a little bit since this show. Now that I've had time to kind of digest this thing, I don't know, just the Rhodey being a Skrull thing and how that affects the timeline, and then the Gaia stuff in the finale, and her now just being like this crazy overpowered superhero in the MCU, and she's just out there still, and then also how it just didn't feel cohesive to the Marvels. All of that just feels like a big sloppy mess, and if you separate it from all that, I think it's really not a bad show, but when you mix in all that, yeah, bottom of the list here. But then on to number 14, I put The Defenders. And I think the whole reason that I semi-enjoyed The Defenders is purely for the team-up aspect. There was some fun action, but the Sigourney Weaver plotline, and then like the resurrecting Elektra, and I don't know, it could have been better. And as for number 13, I put What If? And after two great seasons, I'm always happy to sit down and discuss this show, and I've enjoyed it enough. I think the premise is fun, but I think that people get a little bit too caught up in the what if scenarios these days, and I'm just way more about the main timeline stuff that we have going on. I'm also a huge fan of animation. Just for whatever reason, this style isn't so much my vibe. I really don't know what it is, but I can't not acknowledge that both seasons have been pretty great. Then 12, I put Luke Cage. And Luke Cage is sort of the show in the Netflix bunch that I didn't know that I needed, but Mike Coulter is just a beast, to be honest. Funny enough, though, when I first heard about this show early on in production, I made the mistake of thinking that this was like a Mortal Kombat thing, because I was thinking about Johnny Cage, and it totally wasn't. It was about this badass named Luke Cage. But then on to number 11, and I had to include this on the list, even though maybe it kind of feels like the special presentations, but number 11 is I Am Groot. And yes, they are 5-minute episodes, but dang it if I don't just love this little guy. It's technically still a show, and it's technically canon. But on to the top 10. Number 10, we have Falcon and Winter Soldier, and this is a show that was very much a disappointment for me initially because I wanted Captain America Winter Soldier out of it, you know what I mean? And obviously it wasn't created by the Russos, And so, like, I should have known that going in. And upon a couple of rewatches, actually, now, I've really come around to it. I'm also really excited now to see Sam Wilson's Captain America on the big screen. Is it a top 5 show? No. Is it a top 10 show? Yes. Then on to number 9, Echo. And this is obviously the most recent addition to this list. I actually just put out my review for it, so check that out if you haven't. But I really did enjoy the 5 episodes that we got, and bringing in this mature tone to the MCU while simultaneously making all these Netflix shows canon is just exactly what the doctor ordered for Marvel, man. With Kingpin and Wilson Fisk really entering the mix now, I'm just so stoked about the future of this street level stuff. But on to number 8, I put Jessica Jones. Another great last name, by the way. And I'll be honest with you guys, I'm really just talking about the first season. The second and third kind of fell off for me, but Kilgrave as the villain just really made that first season for me, and I feel like it elevates the whole thing. Then on to number 7, though, I put Moon Knight, and I don't think there's much conversation around Oscar Isaac here. He's phenomenal, and although this show wasn't exactly what I was wanting, the finale especially, I enjoyed it enough, and I thought it was very unique. Ethan Hawke joining the MCU as a villain, like, it was really cool. I really am just hoping for a season 2, though, because I feel like there's so much more to explore with this characters. But then number 6, Miss Marvel. And this is probably the biggest surprise on my list. I actually ended up waiting and binging Miss Marvel because, I don't know, I wasn't that enthused about the project. It seemed like it was geared towards a younger audience, but I was shocked when I first watched it. Iman Vellani absolutely slayed this role, and the family dynamics just made a really, really compelling story. It's great. But here we are at the top 5. And my number 5 is The Punisher. And, you know, the plot of The Punisher is just heavy. Dealing with PTSD and obviously the loss of his family. Frank Castle and the story that he goes on, it's intense. I don't think that his story makes for the absolute best of these Netflix shows, but what really makes this show for me is Jon Bernthal as the character of Frank Castle. That dude can just act, and he's one of my favorites in Hollywood right now, and the word is right now that he is returning, so LFG. But The Punisher is just crazy. I highly recommend watching it if you haven't. It's bloody, and it's just action-packed. It's crazy. But on to number 4, I put Hawkeye. And I might get a little bit of flack for this, putting this in my top 5, but I love this show. Jeremy Renner and Haley Steinfeld together, they work very, very well. It's a holiday show for me, and so it's something that I can turn on like every single year, and I love that about it. And so something about that Christmas season and just the whole vibe that they put together with this show, it just works and it resonates with me. Also, how can you not love Lucky the Pizza Dog? I mean, come on. But getting into my number 3, and this is among some of the best superhero television ever made. I put Daredevil as my number 3. And after watching the first season, I remember just being confused because I didn't really understand what was happening behind the scenes. But I was just like, wait, why isn't this in the MCU? Like, this is so good. Why isn't this connected to the rest of the stuff? But to see these characters and actors and this show getting the respect that it deserves now is freaking awesome. And now we get Daredevil Born Again, and it looks like a lot of love is being shown to that. And so it's just an exciting time to be an MCU fan, especially with the Daredevil character. But here we are at number 2, and guys, my number 2 is Loki. And I actually wasn't as high on this show as a lot of people after season 1. I enjoyed it. I loved all the performances and the introduction of Kang, but it really wasn't until season 2 that this show was cemented for me in glorious purpose. It was just so freaking well done, and the way that everything tied together in the end, and just the journey that Loki as a character has gone on. It's beautiful. It really is a beautiful thing, and now you have these directors stepping into Daredevil Born Again. That's awesome, because they certainly know how to tell a story. But we made it all the way to my number 1, and this one was very easy for me. My number 1 is WandaVision, and I think a lot of people can agree with me that this show was sort of a phenomenon. It was the first week-to-week Marvel TV show, and the difference between episodes and the style style and the different generations of television, and then you mix that with all the speculation and theories going week to week with Mephisto all the way to the X-Men stuff. It was just a really, really cool time period to be an MCU fan, and it felt like at that moment Marvel was really at like the height of their game. And I've gone back and rewatched this show, and I think there's a lot of nostalgia mixed in, but you can't deny that this is such a good show. So that is my number one. But that about wraps up my list, guys, and now I'm very curious to hear from you. Please put yours down in the comments section. I'd love to see where you rank all of these titles, because everybody's is different, and that's kind of the fun part of seeing all these different rank lists. Also, what did you think of my rank? Do you think I'm way off, or do you agree with some of these? Please let me know. Also, if you're new here, hit subscribe. I'd love to have you be a part of this channel. I make a lot of MCU content as well as a lot of other stuff, so be on the lookout. Click on another video, hit the like button for me if you haven't. I really appreciate that support. You can follow me on X at JonesVibesOnly. And don't forget to keep up the good vibes, guys. But that's all the MCU television that I have to rank for now, and we will see what the future brings.